Hello everyone. For step 3 of our Spot the Difference project, we will begin clone stamping. Before we get started, we're actually going to make a copy of our background and keep an original in case we mess up and want to start over again. So I'm going to right click on my layer and say duplicate. This is landscape 1 background. Okay. Now I'm going to turn off this one and throw the lock away temporarily so that I can rename it to original. And then I'm going to relock the layer so that nothing happens to it. I'm going to turn off its visibility, and from now on I will work from landscape 1. Now photoshopping is the same thing as clone stamping. We're going to make a copy of this fish in a new location. We're going to select an area where the background is very similar. So I wouldn't want to select this white area over here. I want to get into a blue area where it's very similar. The way clone stamping works is you hold down the Alt button and the cursor turns into a target. And you select your initial target that you wish to copy. I'm going to click right in the middle of the fish. And then I'm going to move to the new location. Wherever you go, the very first click then establishes the distance between your little plus cursor and where it is that you're painting. So you'll notice, since the backgrounds are very similar, that the fish looks fairly natural. So now I've got a second fish where I didn't have one before. We look at our original. Right here, no fish. Here, there's a fish. I'm going to do what we need to make sure that we can use this in Premiere to make it glow. So this is the next part. Every time you clone stamp, you're going to make a selection around whatever it is you just clone stamped. Now we're going to want things to glow both in this picture and in the one below it. So you hold down the Shift key and use your cursors to move the box that you selected to the location where there isn't a fish. Now we're going to hold down Shift and draw a box around that fish again. What that does is it gives us two areas where we will indicate where the difference is between the two pictures. We need these two rectangles to be on their own layer so that we can use them separately in Adobe Premiere. I'm going to say Layer, New, Via, Copy. If I turn off my landscape background now, you will see the two boxes that will need to glow in order to tell people where the difference was that they were supposed to find. I'm going to go ahead and rename this Change 1. I'm going to move it underneath my other layer so it's out of the way for right now, and choose a second thing to copy. The next thing I'm going to do is erase. So instead of duplicating something, I want to make this piece of coral disappear. Again, we will use our clone stamp tool, and we will pick an area of nice blankness that we're going to paint over this with. So I'm going to go right over to here and Alt and click. Then I'm going to go over to the very beginning of the coral and maybe make my brush a little bigger with my bracket key. And it'll give you a little preview, so I know that I don't want to start painting here because it'll look very fake. But if I line up this line and begin painting, I'll be able to make that piece of coral disappear. Now if I don't let go, then when the little plus symbol gets to where the coral was, it will restart painting the coral. And it'll just keep painting over it. So all we did was move it. Let me undo that and show you again. I'll begin painting, but before the plus symbol gets to where the coral was, I'm going to let go and then click again and continue painting using that area without copying it a second time. Let me zoom out and now make my selections. I'm going to draw a box around the coral that is there. Hold down Shift and cursor down so that I have the exact size around the blank area. Then I'm going to hold down Shift to add a second selection, which is around the coral again. So now I have two rectangles around the coral and the space where the coral used to be. I'm going to go to Layer, New, and make a copy of just those two spots. There they are. Let me turn off my Change 1 and rename this one Change 2. I'm going to move it underneath and turn it off so I can make my final change. Let's see, what should we do? How about another red fish over here somewhere? I'm going to Control plus zoom in and Alt click with my clone stamp on the red fish. I'm going to move over to a spot where I'd like the fish to appear and see if I can make it look fairly realistic. Notice how the backgrounds do not match if I choose this as my spot. Looks pretty fake. But if I go over here, let me zoom out again. I'm going to Alt click again and choose this spot instead. Still doesn't look great. Maybe I should pick something else. I'll try one more time and do it over here on this spot where the coral is more similar in color. Now I'm pretty zoomed out, so I'm going to zoom back in again and just paint the rest of that fish in like that. Now if I want to, I can take some of this. I'm going to Alt click on some of this blue coral and then paint right along the edge of that fish so I don't see the parts that didn't look so realistic. Okay, so now I have a second red fish. I'm going to zoom in again, make my selection around the fish, move that selection down until it's in the spot where that fish appeared, and then Shift and draw a selection around the fish. So now again I have two rectangles. They should be about the same size. I didn't do a great job making those match up. I suppose I could add a little bit more to my selection, and that doesn't look too bad. Layer, New, via Copy, and now I've got my Change 3. So let's take a look at these changes. If I turn off my backgrounds, I have 1, 2, 3 different changes that I made. Now they're all on the right side of the image, so maybe some over here would be more appropriate. Let's just do 3 for our first one, and then if it looks good, then we can do one that has many more changes. Now if you turn on Landscape Background 1, you're not going to see any change really because those spots are all there. But if I turn on the original and turn off my actual background, I can turn that on and off, and I can easily see the stuff that I've changed on the image.